All right, for everybody who's listening, I'm sure we're all aware of this story. It's one of the most famous stories in Sunday school, and they teach it all over the place. But Daniel in the lion's den. Harry, do we have any background on this story?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about it because he was a very old man by this time. He got to be about 90 years old because when he was a teenager, Nebuchadnezzar carried him off from Israel to Babylon, and he was a prince back in Israel. So because Nebuchadnezzar wanted people there that of royal blood serving him, that always feels good for a king. So he was 70 years working in the Babylonian Empire, and then the Medes and Persians conquered that. And what is interesting about it, Daniel worked in the king's region all the time, all his life in the palace. And now here he's working for Darius, King Darius, on the next people, like the Medes and Persians. And he's one of the chief people working there. And he is one of the three top administrators in this country. And what that is really interesting because how does he get from being a captive again? He was a captive in Israel. Now he was a captive again, and he's working in the next group of people. And of course, that's really where the problem came from because he was one of the big administrators in this place. And they say the people that he was working with hated on him because they said, well, that's weird. Like, this is our business. And here you have this Jewish guy doing, being working with us. So that's what kind of set things off. So how did he end up in the lion's den then, Justin?
Well, he ended up in the lion's den because he, like you said, he had some problems with the new chiefs, shall we call them, that were there as well with them. Not as more that he was had problems with the king, but with his co-workers at that time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah, and then of course what happened is they said, well, the guy's honest man, can't find anything wrong with that, but he's got this peculiar God habit. He's always praying to his God. So that's where things went sideways. Well, that's where they saw the opportunity. I'm sorry. And with that, they said, well, maybe we'll make a new rule. Do you want to tell about the rule?
Yeah, for sure. So this is what happened. They go to the king and they say, "Hey, you should make it that everybody only can worship and bow down to you." I'm just generalizing here, but we know that being members of God's family, we can't do that as children of God. So obviously that wouldn't sit well with Daniel. So what happened next?
Yeah, and it says, now Daniel learned that the decree had been published. He went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. And that wasn't okay because there was a new rule in town now. And Daniel got into trouble because they immediately reported Daniel to the king.
You know what I
So
find interesting in this whole scenario, though, is he didn't change any behavior. You know, he saw the decree and the government put out this rule. And what did he do? He just did his normal activities of serving God. I truly loved that when I was reading that. Like nothing changed to him. It didn't phase him one bit. Like his relationship with God was so strong. He knew that God would provide even before any punishment came his way.
yeah, peer pressure didn't get to him at all. He could have had, he had security. He could have easily prayed in private for a month and all that. But no, he was going, his number one king was God, and he was going to make sure that he got the proper respect. And so anyways, there was no choice. The decree was permanent. The king couldn't reverse the decree, so Daniel went to the lion's den. He had to go. So what was Daniel's greatest hardship in the lion's den?
See me, I like I said, I think he was in such a great place with God that there was no hardship. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I think the smell would be pretty bad.
Yeah, I guess if you're in a dungeon like that, right at the bottom, that's probably not the greatest smell.
What about the king? How did he fare?
Oh, it says in the chapter 6 of Daniel there that he hired no entertainment for the night and he was distraught in his room, couldn't sleep, and was thinking all day, I just put my number one chief into a lion's den because I made this ridiculous rule. He was feeling distraught to say the least. Isn't that fair to say?
Yeah. What did he do in the morning?
He rushed down there right away and he said, Daniel, has your living God not handed you over to the lions? And of course, we find out that Daniel says, he hasn't. You know, he has provided, he has closed the mouths of these lions.
Yeah. And so he hauled them out of the pit and then he fed the lions. Who did he feed to the lions now?
Yeah.
So he put the other people that complained about Daniel, put them in the den. But I really liked what the bottom line was. After it was all over, this is what it says. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language throughout the land. He had a huge empire. The Babylonian Empire was the first one. This is the Medes and Persians. Huge empire, covered all the world. And he says, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His God's dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. Who got all the credit?
That's a really good question because it's something so glorious, but God got all the credit. But what was Daniel's role into it? What did Daniel have to do for God to get all the credit, Harry?
You had to be faithful and consistent. Had to be totally faithful to his number one God, serve him properly, and God took care of the rest of the details. That's all he had to do. And not that it was all, I mean, not making light of it, but he just, like Daniel always did, he was consistent.
Amen. Thanks a lot for this, Harry.
Thank you.